Hi guys, it's Blackie for Shaman's Forge Bushcraft. Today I want to begin a little series about one of my favorite tools, the Kukri. And I want to call this series the Field Guide to the Kukri, Practical Field Guide to the Kukri. Now, I'd like to apologize for not posting videos no more than I've been doing. Weather, business, you understand. You live in the real world like I do, so you understand. But, let's get started. Okay, what is a Kukri? And let me start out. You saw this in one of my first videos. It's a cold steel Kukri machete. Now I said it was not a true Kukri, but I'll get to that in a minute. Let's start out what it is. A Kukri is a large chopping knife that is narrow here, widens and becomes a continuous curve all the way to a point. Now these range in sizes from small, like this, up to full-size choppers, on up to swords or machetes. They vary in thickness, weight forward, and perform different jobs based upon what they're intended to do. Now, for example, the thin, long ones, like this, are used much like a machete, and that's what we think of when we should pick one up, a machete. If it's thin, like 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, or less, something like that, long, graceful, think of it as a small, handy machete, and it exceeds in that, and I have nothing but praise for this one. If you haven't already seen my video, I recommend you stop, go back and look at my video, and I'll detail all the attributes of this. But this is a Kukri shaped machete. It does the job of a machete, and this continuous curve, when you hit a target, wants to slide deeper into it. It also makes work very easy because it's weight forward, and so in the chopping motion you're getting all the weight up here. Now a straight machete, of which we're all familiar, gets all of its power from speed, so you're putting all the whop into it, and all the power comes from your wrist. From a Kukri shape, the weight forward actually wants to pull it forward, so when you go to hit, you can relax your wrist and let the tool do the job. It's a very effective chopping tool and one of my all-time favorites for use in the field. Now, as I said, this is a Kukri shaped machete. This is a Kukri. This is imported by Himalayan Imports. It's handmade in Nepal. Now, look how thick that thing is. Nearly, just short of a 1/2 inch spine. This does the job of a tomahawk or a light axe. When you pick one of these up, that's what you should be thinking, is of a tomahawk, light axe, belt axe, something like that. And it does a superior job in many ways to that. Now, you'll see this funny little cutout in Kukris. Notice there isn't one in the machete. Now there are lots of mythos and things about what that's for. They say it's the trident of Shiva. They say it has something to do with mythology. But from a metal point of view, let's understand what makes the Kukri work. The metal is high carbon steel, but it's relatively soft back here in this part, thus the thickness. This allows the steel to flex. As you know, steel is more elastic than rubber given the proper input. So upon impact, the back will actually flex minutely and keep from breaking. Notice how thin it is right here versus here. So this edge is very, very hard, like on a Rockwell of around 60. So it holds an edge very well. And if you made that edge run all the way back to here, it's thin and it's hard. It's going to crack. So they put this relief cut right here, and that allows this hard edge and this soft back to work together. So upon hitting repeatedly, hour after hour, thousands and thousands and thousands of cuts, it will allow this thick part, notice how thick it is in there, almost quarter-inch thick at the base of that, to act like a shock absorber for the edge, allowing this edge to be very hard and this back to be relatively soft. Now, flaring the handle. You'll see this in different ones, and even in the Kukri shaped machete you'll see that. That's a functional part of it. It allows you to choke up, and notice how this swell keeps my hand from sliding down. It keeps my hand in the optimum place. Now, hammers, tomahawks, things like with straight handles, when you start chopping repeatedly, remember that blade wants to bite and pull away from you. You would slide down the handle. By putting this flare back here, it keeps your hand centered. Most of them, like this one, have a little finger swell or something like that, that your ring finger and your bird finger should fit on either side of it, like that. And that will keep it centered on it. You also should have a straight line from your wrist right through the notch where your thumb meets your forefinger. There should be like a notch right there if you feel. That should be right down the middle of that line. So when you chop with it, it's very relaxed. Now, when you hit, as you can see, my wrist is almost at straight angle to my hand when the blade impacts, thus less fatigue. As I mentioned in a couple of other videos about it fatiguing the wrist, the Kukri is a very, very well designed tool for chopping, for shearing, for cleaving game and things like that. And if you get the thick one and get a real one, then you've got a superior chopping tool for day-to-day bushcraft use, where you need an axe or hatchet, not felling trees. Yes, you can fell saplings and everything else, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches, and I have hacked a 18-inch tree in half one time, but I wasn't planning on it. I had to do it. Now, as I said, these scale up. So let's scale down a second. A year or so ago, actually I think it's 2 years ago now, a friend of mine posted me to a challenge. Back when I was a young man, I accepted a challenge from a friend of mine, and it was called the Year of the K-Bar. And for a full year in all my field duties, I did nothing in the field without that K-Bar. From cutting up my dinner, preparing game, filleting fish, building shelters, everything. That was the one cutting tool I was allowed to use, was my K-Bar. And so for a full year, I did that. When I got done, I can tell you about anything you want to know about a K-Bar. My friend challenged me to Year of the Kukri. And so I got a collection of Kukris. Every field function that was possible to be done with a Kukri had to be done with a Kukri. And I did. This was my belt Kukri. Now, when you see this, think of heavy belt knife. Yes, it chops, but the spine on it's about a 1/4 inch thick. It tapers very well to a nice wide, thin edge. Again, it has the classic Kukri features. It has this angle, weight forward, thick, soft back, hard edge, relief cut, and all the proper geometry in the handle that was developed over hundreds and hundreds of years of usage. It feels awkward to our Western hands when you first pick up one, because we're used to round, thick, boxy grips. When you feel this taper grip, it feels too small. And it is too small back here. This is where you should be gripping. These 3 fingers are what grips the Kukri. These fingers just stabilize and ride along. It should be a whipping action, almost like that is how you should be actually chopping with a Kukri. It relaxes your arm and let the weight of the Kukri do the job. Now this size, I believe it's called an officer's model. I got it off of eBay, and it was called Jungle Kukri from Gurkha House. I believe it was Gurkha House I got it from. And it's been a fantastic belt knife, and that's what I use this for. It is just small enough that it can perform the functions of a knife, and just big enough it can do light chopping. Now I could prepare a shelter with this if I needed to. I could dig with it, whatever I got to do. It's still, as you can see, pretty thick hunk of steel, and it holds an edge extremely well. And so for that, through this area, right here, it was a fantastic cutting knife. And I was actually amazed how it was not a hindrance in any way to use it as a knife, like we think of, you know, like more a knife. If you're looking for just a companion, I recommend this size. This is everything you need for a knife that can do real light work as far as light chopping. Now I say light, it'll easily handle whatever you want to do. It's just time consuming. It doesn't have the weight of the full size. Think of this as a heavy chopping knife, kind of like a Tom Brown tracker is a chopping knife. And not to diss the knife, it's very well made. Handling both, having used both in the field, I'll take this over a Tom Brown tracker any day for my personal usage. Just the way I like to use a knife, or a great big old Bowie or something like that, I'll take this. But this is the size that you want to get for a knife. Okay? This is a hand axe. Think of this as about a 1.5 pound, no, make that a pound head Tomahawk or something like that. It's great for chopping. Rides on your belt or on your pack, and is good for land clearing, shelter building, digging, splitting, betoning, all of the above. That's where this actually shines. That big thick back, you can put it on, I mean like 6-inch diameter wood, and sit there and baton it as a splitting wedge and have no problem. Now, the next size up from this, they start getting a little different. Now, if they get thin and get longer, I believe it's called a surrepti. Think of that as a machete, or really it's a sword. Thick. Now, no, you can't see real good in this detail. I hope you can. But this has triple fullers. There's a hollow grind, a ridge, a hollow grind, and a ridge. This is called an ancola. Ancola means chopper, basically. And if you're looking for an axe, go with an ancola. Now, I will try to insert along in here a picture of my original Kukri collection and a picture of my big ancola. That thing was that big and weighed 2 pounds. That was an axe. Unapologetically, that was an axe. The great advantage to that axe versus the reach that we're normally thinking of, and the real niche where that big Kukri comes into place, is in a canoe. I canoe a lot of rivers and things that are kind of rough areas. And when you come around a bend, you got a tree across, and you got a limb right there that you've got to cut. There's no way to portage or nothing, and you're stuck. And you got something this big right here that you're going to have to cut. It is superior to a full-size axe, because with this, with a Kukri, I can cut right here. I can choke up with 2 hands and do this and cut right here in front of me, up close. I can't do that with an axe, because the axe, by definition, is designed to be standing up and swinging. I can be sitting with a Kukri and cut comfortably and safely. Okay, now let's discuss the next segment. We're going to talk about how to sharpen. We're going to talk about carrying. We're going to talk about uses besides just the obvious chopping. Stay with me. I'll be right back.